Okay, so it looks like it is 10 after the hour, so I will go ahead and start. I'll just start by saying, by thanking Rachel and Peter for that great presentation. It really was a great introduction to what we're going to do now, but also showed that working with cloud apps um, is fun, hopefully, and useful, and can be done in a short period of time. So I hope that by the end of this presentation, anyone who has considered working with cloud apps on the development side will feel the courage and encouragement to go ahead and get started. So thank you, and I enjoyed very much working with the AnswerEdge team on the hackathon. So it was a really great experience. I'd like to start off, I don't know if this is going to work, we can try. I'd like to try to get a feel for on the session today, if we were in a room together, which hopefully we will be someday soon, I would poll the audience and say how many of you have, and that will help me to kind of perhaps adjust my remarks according to what experience folks have had so far with cloud apps. So I would like to see if we can try to raise our hands to answer yes to just a few questions, and we'll see if this works. So if you have had any experience using cloud apps, if you have used a cloud app so far, can you try to raise your hand, and we'll see if we can see. Excellent. So this is just using a cloud app so far. So you've installed one, you've enabled it for your institution. So keep raising those hands, hold them up there for a minute. Okay, so that's actually a nice group. That's a nice group. Thank you. So we put our hands down now. And if you've had any experience building a cloud app, any at all, so if you've downloaded and installed the CLI, or if you've even played with it, can you go ahead and raise your hand? So any experience on the building of cloud app side. And I'll hold that for a minute. Okay, so a much smaller percentage. So that's good. That means that hopefully this session will be helpful. So thank you, everyone. Share my desktop, upload the presentation. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'll open by giving a little bit of background into cloud apps. I see that while a lot of you have had experience using them, many of you have not as well. So I think it's worthwhile spending a few minutes giving a little bit of background. And then we're going to hop right in and start looking at some code and hopefully give the rest of you some encouragement to go ahead and give development a try. So many of you have probably seen this slide before with some various adjustments, but I like to always kind of point out some updated numbers about the open platform. The open platform is what we call the way that Ex Libris products, and Alma in particular, can reach out and work with your institutional ecosystem. So, 200 REST APIs, you've heard that before, millions of webhooks sent every month, millions of API calls every day. And this just kind of goes to show what the hundreds of people on this call are doing with their day jobs, and the ingenuity and the creativity of this developer community. And so, the apps that are available on the App Center, the standards supported by Ex Libris products. So that's our open platform in general, and that is our REST APIs, our standard integrations, and our standard support. And of course, Cloud Apps kind of fits into that whole picture as the next, I guess, iteration in the open platform. And so Cloud Apps was launched just last year, and unfortunately, we haven't yet had the opportunity to meet together since Cloud Apps were released. I think that it would really be great. The hackathon that the Android community did was really wonderful. And I think it'd be great in some future IGeLU when we're all together to do a day-long workshop, just kind of getting started, everyone together, because it really lends itself to that kind of collaboration. Cloud apps are an open framework which allow you to write apps. So Ex Libris is writing apps, and partners and the community, as you saw. And those apps run inside of Alma or the higher ed cloud platform. And so, we have those, we saw 7 million API calls being made every day. That means there's an awful lot of apps, of scripts being run out there, amongst all of the Alma customers. And but that means that each one of those apps has to run in some kind of runtime environment. So it has to run on a machine, and it has to, you need an API key to get started. And so there's a certain barrier there for perhaps less technical users. So obviously there's a lot of scripts and apps being run behind the scenes. But if a business user, an end user, a less technical user wants to share an app or make use of something that someone else wrote, there's a certain barrier there. And in order to allow libraries to build apps that improve the efficiency of their institutions, and to respond in an agile way, especially in the world we live in today, we wanted to provide a platform where it would be easy to develop, to launch, and to host and to install. The whole, from development to end user would be done in a hosted environment, and that's what cloud apps provide. So you can write an app, you can make it available in the App Center and within Alma, and then your end users don't need anything to install it. Okay, it can just be, they can just activate it, and we'll see that, of course, and they can make use of it without having to create an API key or having to create any type of runtime environment. The nice thing about cloud apps is that you have access to the entire, all those 200 REST APIs. You can also reach out to other, get data from other locations, share data from Alma, or pull in outside data, as you saw in one of the examples apps that was in the previous presentation. Just in this past year, there's already 35 cloud apps, which is really, really great. 3 of them are already available on the App Center from the hackathon, and a whole bunch of others. Right now, as we speak, the 36th cloud app is being reviewed, and so it's really a great response there. And a lot of users have installed out apps a lot of times. So just a couple months ago, we had our press release where there were 1,000 activations, and today we're already at 4,000 activations of cloud apps among all of the Alma community. So that's really great. And of course, the nice thing about cloud apps is that they can be developed by the community, by partners, and Ex Libris has developed some as well. We've seen basically so far 3 different use cases, or 3 types of apps that are being built. So the first is adding new functionality. So if something is not yet supported by Alma, this gives developers the power to extend Alma and to add new additional functionality to Alma, which was not previously available. The second type of app is productivity apps. So workflow shortcuts. So I guess an example is that delete your sets app that we saw in the previous presentation. So things which are possible today, but perhaps in less than perfectly efficient workflows. And so you can build workflows that are either custom for a particular workflow that your institution uses often, or just kind of overcomes some productivity issues within the products. And the last is integration. So kind of like that Trove app that we saw, the ability to share information from Alma with external sources, and the ability to pull in data from external sources and then use it inside of Alma. So it's 3 different types of apps that we've seen so far. So that's the introduction, just a couple of minutes. I saw that there are still a bunch of people who haven't used cloud apps, so I think it's worthwhile just taking a minute to take a look at how they're used from the user side. Okay, and there'll be a presentation at IGeLU tomorrow. We'll show some more examples of cloud apps, and then after that, just a few minutes, we'll actually look at some code and start to work on some apps together. Okay, so I'll just log into my Alma instance here. After I was logged out. Okay, so once I've activated Cloud Apps, I'll have in my institution or in my environment, I'll have a Cloud App Center icon here. I can click on that and I can pin that and I get my list of activated, installed apps, which I have a bunch in this environment. And I have a list of available apps as well. I can search for apps. And when I click on an app, I can see some information about it. I can see who built it. I can get links to more information, and I can go ahead and open the app. And then the app interacts. You can see it's within my Alma environment. It's on the right-hand panel, and I can interact with the open pages that are inside of Alma. So if, for example, I look for some items here in Alma, this is a Spinomatic app. So many of you are familiar with the Spinomatic client application, which has been around since the beginning of Alma and was written at the Boston College. So this is kind of the next iteration, the next generation of Spinomatic, which is a cloud app version, which doesn't have all the features of the app that's been written for a decade or more, but it does have a bunch of features. And so you see here that as soon as I brought up my list of physical items, the app responded, and I can go ahead and select items that are being displayed within Alma. So, very, very brief, high level. That's some of the things that you can do with cloud apps, and then you can use all the APIs to retrieve more information and act on them, whether it's get, put, post, etc. So that's from the end user experience, right? So I'm an end user until now. I have my administrator has activated cloud apps within my environment. I was able to see this icon. We'll notice also that because the cloud apps recognizes that I have apps that are installed that work with items, and it sees that I have items here. So it provides this little green dot, and then it says here are the suggested apps for this page. So the Print Bib Records app and the Spinomatic app both know how to work with physical items. So from the end user perspective, I could click on the Cloud App Center. I opened it, and I'm able to open apps and close apps. And so that's from the end user side. And of course, there's much more there, but we'll go ahead now. This is Dev Day after all. So let's go ahead and get into some code. So like everything good in the world, we start here at the developer network, and we still have this call out up here, or we have in the upper right hand corner a link to cloud apps. And again, we're on the developer side now. So these are for developers to come in and learn how to build cloud apps. So within this section, we have we see the steps. You develop, then you publish, and then you install, your users install your app. And we have three main areas that we can look at. One of them, the first, is the Getting Started guide, and that's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of minutes. We're going to walk through that guide, those instructions together. There are detailed documentation after you're up and running, and so we'll touch on this briefly in a few moments. And then there are tutorials. I'd like to we'll call out the tutorials app later, because I hope that the tutorials are a great reference and resource for you as you're getting started building cloud apps. But first, in order to get started, we have to start with the Getting Started guide. I have already installed the prerequisites, so I have Node.js running, I have Visual Studio Code or some other editor running, I have a GitHub, and we just saw the Cloud Apps are enabled for my institution. And I have also already installed the CLI. So the way that Cloud Apps work locally on your machine is that, or when you're developing Cloud Apps, you're working locally on your workstation. You have this CLI, this command line interface installed, and the command line interface allows you to develop Cloud Apps. So what's going to happen is we're going to actually have an app running locally, and that environment is going to be pointed to my Alma instance. We don't want to have Alma running locally because that's too much. But we do want to have our Cloud App running locally so that we can enjoy that Angular development experience. And so what this Cloud App CLI does, it allows me to run my Cloud App locally. It points to it proxies, similar to the Primo development environment. It proxies my Alma instance, and then it's actually quite a nice development experience. Let's go ahead and get started. So again, the CLI is already installed. I've already run this npm install. It's available in npm, of course. And so now I'm just here in my terminal. I'm going to make a new directory, and then I'll cd into there. And the command to create a new application is ECA, which is the Ex Libris Cloud Apps. That's the name of the command line interface that we run in it. So I'm going to run that. It's going to ask me a few questions. So I'll add title, IGeLU 2021 demo app. It's going to ask me for my name, and then the Alma environment that I want to run against. So I'll run against my sandbox, although you could run against your production or sandbox. It doesn't matter. And then it'll ask me for my port. I'll use the default port. And that just created some scaffolding and app locally for me. Let's go ahead and just open that up in Visual Studio Code so we can look at that in a moment. And then I'm going to run the next command, which is ECA start. So ECA start is going to start the app locally. And this is going to first run npm install to install all of the dependencies, and then it's going to start up the Angular development environment, so ng, and then it's also going to start up the proxy server to proxy my Alma environment. Okay, so while this is running, let's go over to our Visual Studio Code, to our editor, and let's just take a look around at what we have here. So what did that ECA init create for me? So I have my package JSON, the latest version of the Cloud App framework uses Angular 11. I have this file called a manifest, which we'll see more about in a few minutes. And I have this configuration file, which includes all of those parameters that I just put in with the CLI. And then it has this directory called Cloud Apps. And the Cloud App directory includes a source. And within the source, I have localization. Cloud Apps support localization, so you can make it available in multiple languages. I have an assets directory to put in the images. And then I have my app directory. Now, for those of you who have experience with Angular, so all of this will seem familiar to you. As Rachel mentioned before in the previous presentation, these are written in Angular. There are plenty of Angular getting started resources out there on the internet, and so of course, it is recommended that you do at least an Angular getting started, guide or course or video. I do want to say, though, that there are, the scaffolding here gives you, it sets everything up in a way that hopefully it'll work for you. And also the tutorials and the other apps that are available, since all of the apps are on GitHub, will provide a lot of examples of things. So I hope, although it does take some, you have to get used to the Angular paradigm, hopefully there are enough examples out there to help you get started, to help kind of boost you up. So this is kind of some Angular stuff here, service, the module, the component, etc. And then within my, each component in the Angular structure has its own directory. And so I have my main component, which has an HTML page, some CSS, and then the code behind. So it's actually similar to what Mehmet was doing earlier in the first talk, how to break up a component. So in Angular, components are broken up like this by default, as opposed to AngularJS. And so I have my component files here, which we'll see momentarily. So the CLI, the first time it's going to run, of course, is going to spend some time installing all of the dependencies, and then it's going to start up this local development environment, and then it's going to pop it open for me in localhost. And again, the dev environment is running in localhost, but you see here from this configuration that it's actually using my Alma, which is available, of course, hosted. So let's go ahead, and it just popped open my development environment. Let me go ahead and log in. Okay, see, this is already the September release, right? Because I pointed to my premium sandbox. You could also point to your production Alma instance, and then you'd be in the August release. We see, as I mentioned, we are in localhost, but of course, again, my Alma is the hosted one. And what's going to happen now is I'm going to open up the Cloud App Center, just like we saw in production a moment ago. And this Cloud App Center is going to show my local app running as the first app. So as soon as my premium sandbox loads here for the first time, and then I will have the Cloud App Center. And here in the Cloud App Center, we see I have all the apps that I have installed in my sandbox. And the first app, this is the app that I'm working on locally. So in the local development environment, this first app is the one I'm working on locally, my IGeLU 2021 app. I click on it, and I get this scaffolding that's built in. Whenever I create a new app, this is already here. It gives some information about what the app does. Let's go ahead and look at one of the things that it does. I can navigate to a page in Alma to view a list of entities. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to items. Let's go to, again, my favorite search term. And I have no items here. It must be because this environment was not indexed after the premium sandbox was installed. So no worries, I'll show you now how to switch to a different environment. Anytime I want to switch to a different environment, I can go back to the configuration. I can go ahead and switch here to my production environment, and then I can just restart that up again, and I'll be up and running in a moment. And then I'll be pointing to my production environment, which is fine because I don't make that many changes, so I'm not too scared to do it in production. And we'll also see that all of these apps that I have installed here in production, you'll see that they're installed in my development environment, and plus the additional app that I'm working on locally. We'll go back here to our Cloud App itself. So we'll see that HTML that I just saw, the welcome and use these building blocks, etc. So all of that not on mute anymore. See if we can just have mute if possible. Excellent, great, thank you. So we see that text, that HTML that we saw on the screen a moment ago, that's here in this HTML file. Use these building blocks, etc., etc. So that's right here in this file. And in a moment, we'll see how we can make changes here and reflect them instantly inside of the app. And on my default TypeScript file, there's not a lot going on here. I just am watching for any entities that might appear on the screen. So I'm watching for any entities that might appear on the screen. When an entity is selected, you'll see that I do some change the screen a little bit and use the REST API to make additional calls. And I've got some functionality here to clear the list and to update an entity. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I'm back here in my Cloud App Center. I'm in my IGeLU app. I can look for physical items with the name history. And we see that as soon as I came to this list of physical items, my Cloud App updated. So it's now showing me that list. I can go ahead and edit a particular item here, and we'll see that this list now becomes only one because there's one item available. I can select that item in my Cloud App, and what the Cloud App did is it went and called the REST API for this entity, which happens to be an item. It shows me the API result. It shows me this is the selected entity. Okay, so an entity in a Cloud App has a type, has a description, has a link to get more information about it. I can go down and make a change here to the chronology field, for example, and then I can click on the update button. Now I'm calling a put API. Now I'm calling a refresh on the Cloud App. So what the Cloud App did is it updated that entity, and then it asked Alma to refresh itself. And now we see the updated value inside of Alma. I can go ahead and clear that. Update again. It will refresh Alma. So that's just using the built-in scaffolding. So as I said, we try to get you started in the right track here, right? So what we've done so far is we've simply initialized a new app. We've installed all the dependencies and got it up and running. And then without doing anything, I already have opened up. I already have this functionality happening inside my app. I'm able to see what entities are being shown on the screen, list them, select them, update them, etc. So that's what's available within the Cloud App scaffolding out of the box without doing anything else. Let's go back here to our HTML page. I'll just make a quick change. Welcome to IGeLU 2021 Dev Day. I will save that, and as soon as I save that, my app is refreshed because that's the way that Angular works. For those of you who have used Angular before, you can make changes locally. Your app gets refreshed, and now I see that new text here. Okay, so that Angular development experience we're getting within our Cloud Apps. Okay, so now if I'm building my app, the next thing I would want to do is to start understanding the requirements that I've been given. And I want to start to figure out how I can implement those requirements. One of the great ways that we have of doing that is using the tutorials. So I mentioned before we have on the developer network, we have tutorials. So I'll go back to Cloud Apps and I'll see the tutorial section. And the tutorial section shows what all the tutorials are, and there's some walkthroughs here, so you can just view the code if you want to. Here to add additional routes. If I want to add additional pages, there's an explanation of how it works. But I can also follow along on this tutorials app. Okay, so it shows me here that to install the tutorials app, I can come into my environment, and I can search for tutorials. And I can install that app locally and install that app into my environment. And now I have the tutorials app running. And so I can kind of play with it and see how it works, but I'm not actually running that app locally. I've installed it like I have any other app. And one of the nice things about all these Cloud Apps is that they are available in GitHub, and I can install any app and I can run it locally. And then I can actually see what's happening behind the scenes, which is pretty neat. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this app from running. Let's go ahead and bounce out to our one directory up. I want to run the app locally, and here are some instructions. So I'm going to clone the repository to my machine. Let's go ahead and clone. This is the repository of the tutorials app. So the tutorials app is in GitHub like anything else. And I'm going to go cd into that directory. And then I'm going to run an ECA init. Now, ECA init, that's the same command that I ran to create a new app. Except this now, it says, oh, I see that you already are inside of an app. Do you want to reconfigure this? And yes, I do. And so it's going to ask me for the environment URL. And also for the port. And that's it. So now I've taken an app from GitHub, I've reconfigured it locally, and now I want to run ECA start just like I would for a brand new app. And it's going to do the same thing. It's going to install the dependencies, and then it's going to start up my local development environment. And so when this starts up, I'm going to have the app running locally, and then I'm able to make changes, to play around with it, and to kind of see behind the scenes what it's doing. And this is, again, a way to kind of get me started with different use cases. So while that's running, let's go back in my production environment. Let's go ahead and open up the tutorials app that I just mentioned, and let's see a few of the features that it has. So the tutorials app shows me, again, just kind of a list of things that I might want to do as a part of my cloud app requirements. So I can add additional routes. Okay, so it shows me how to add additional pages within my app. So here you see I have a multi-page app, right? I've got my main page, and then I'm going back and forth to different apps, to different screens. It shows me how to use my theme, right? So you see I'm in the Alma, whatever color this is, dark blue, and my buttons here in my app use that theme. There is a settings API within Cloud Apps. So this shows me how to use the settings service. So I can change the settings service. I can then save it. And when I come back in, we see those values are saved. So again, very simple, just showing me how to use the settings. Often I want to be able to create, to do multiple API requests simultaneously, and that is ready for me to see. So this shows me how I can make parallel requests. It shows me how I can show progress as I'm making these requests. So again, it's not doing anything amazing, but hopefully it's kind of showing you different use cases you might want to, how to reach outside of your app, to search in the HathiTrust API, for example, how to use XML, bibliographic records, model binding, using a storage service, making your app available for translations, selecting multiple entities, the configuration service, and the style guide. So these are all parts of the Cloud App Tutorial app that will hopefully get you started and give you a little boost. This was my local version of the tutorials app. So we'll log in. And I'll just open up my Visual Studio Code to this directory as well. And we see here now I'm in the cloud. This is the Cloud Apps tutorial. And we see within the apps directory all of those different components that we just saw a minute ago, right? Binding, configuration, external, etc. And we see that we are running locally. So now I can go into I see that this is now the Cloud Apps tutorial, not the one that I have installed in production, but the local one that's running. And I know that because I can come in here and I can go to my main component, and I can say do that, and then I'm refreshing. So again, this is just like building my own app. I'm just using an existing app, and I'm able to make changes and see how the code is run, etc. So those are a bunch of use cases, scenarios, and some code behind the scenes that you're welcome to make use of, adjust, modify, copy. I mentioned before that we would come back to the manifest. So this manifest is a file which kind of describes the things that the Cloud app does. So, when we see, for example, we can look for our tutorial app, and we see all the information, description, for information on these tutorials. So that comes from here: description, the subtitle, the title. This shows me what external websites I'm reaching out to. That comes from here as well. So the manifest describes your app. It's used to show how the app in the App Center, and it's also used to kind of interact with Alma. So the manifest is worth taking a look at. Okay, so I have gotten started. I've used my new app. I've used an existing app, the tutorials app. We've seen that there are a whole bunch of different tutorials available for me to play with and to kind of, dive into the deep end, as it were, trying to get started. I'll mention here in the documentation that, once you've gotten started, once you've played with it, you might have, the need for, for a deep dive, and that's here in the documentation. So here we talk about the command line interface, the CLI, all the commands that are available. Here's a guide to publishing. So that's great that the app is running locally, but how do I get it, to appear for all of my users? So that's here in the publishing guide, along with the video, which hopefully you'll find helpful. More information about the manifest, the Cloud App API itself, all the services that are available, to get events, to see what's happening within Alma, to use the REST APIs, settings, configuration, alerts, store. These are all things available when you're building a Cloud app. Here's a style guide, which we advise or recommend that you follow, so that the apps kind of look similar to each other. A guide to testing Cloud apps, and a guide to updating the SDK when that's required. So after you've gotten yourself started, either with a new app or an existing app, and you want to dive more deeply into the documentation, that's available here.
1 minute, Josh?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so now what? So we have a link here to the Getting Started guide to download the CLI. The tutorials app that I mentioned is linked to here. And then it's just a matter of brainstorming use cases, which may be helpful at your institution for you to be able to get started and dive in and build an app. And most importantly, or not most importantly, but also importantly, we have here a link to the forum. The forum of the Developer Network is a place to ask questions if you run into trouble, if you want to know if this is an appropriate use case for Cloud apps. You can reach out to us. We answer the forum, as well as other people who have experience as well, and start building. So we have maybe 30 seconds if there are any questions. And as I mentioned there, the resources for getting started include that forum as well. So if you have any questions after the fact, you can reach out to me or reach out to us on the forum.
There is one question from Daniel. Would a Cloud app reaching out to a private local API be allowed to be published?
Right. So so that Cloud apps are available to any institution, so you can't limit to which institutions Cloud app is available. But we do have 1 or 2 examples of Cloud apps which are really only relevant to a particular institution, and that's fine. You can just make it clear in the description this is an app that's made for this particular institution. And then, of course, others it wouldn't be relevant for others. So so that's not an issue.
Somebody raised their hand, so I'm going to allow them to talk for a second. Patrick? Patrick? No, okay. So
All right.
if there are still questions, then you can reach Josh. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
And hope to see you in real life very soon, to be honest.
Agreed.
We're all missing human contact.
Absolutely.